Mae West was a force of nature, a woman who could light up the screen with a glance and scandalize a nation with a single line. But Hollywood's golden age wasn't ready for her boldness. As her films broke box office records, Mae broke the unspoken rules of what a woman could say, do, or be on screen. The censors fought back, rewriting her scripts, cutting her lines, jailing her, and eventually blacklisting her films. The very industry she saved turned against her, desperate to bury the woman they once couldn't stop praising. This is the story of how Hollywood silenced Mae West, a tale of power, rebellion, and the cost of speaking out in an era that demanded silence. If you like stories like this, please consider joining the channel. We post new content every week, and we would love to have you join our growing community. And now let's get into this week's story, how Hollywood censored Mae West. She entered the world on a sweltering August day in 1893, though she'd later shave a few years off that date, because Mae West was always the author of her own legend. Born Mary Jane West in Brooklyn, it was a name that barely grazed her lips. She would be no ordinary Mary. Mae, as the world would come to know her, was destined to burn brighter, laugh louder, and rewrite the rules of womanhood in bold red lipstick. Her father, John, was a boxer-turned-detective, an Irish-American brawler who knew New York's underbelly as intimately as a lover. Mae absorbed his street smarts like sunlight on a sultry summer's day. Her mother, Matilda, was the soft-spoken counterpoint, a Bavarian immigrant with a corseted figure and a mind unbound by the strictures of Victorian prudery. From her, Mae learned to move with grace, sing with abandon, and never fear the sway of her own hips. Their marriage was a battlefield, but Mae stood at the crossroads of their two worlds, her father's grit and her mother's sensuality. The union left her skeptical of love's promises, wary of forever. Why be chained to one man when the whole world could be your stage? At 5 years old, she found that stage. It was the Royal Theatre, and the spotlight beckoned like the North Star. Draped in pink and green satin, she claimed first prize in a talent competition. Years later, she would confess, "I ached for it, the spotlight. It felt like the strongest man's arms around me." By 7, she was tap dancing and singing at the Elks Club, a slip of a girl with a swagger that was entirely her own. School books soon gave way to stage scripts. As an adolescent, she was taking juvenile roles in dusty melodramas, delivering heartbreak and heroics to enthralled Brooklyn audiences. But Mae wanted more, always more. She carved a niche as Baby Mae, playing a moonshiner's daughter who stormed saloon doors, head held high, in search of her drunken father. From 8 to 11, she stomped across the footlights with all the fire of a woman twice her size. Vaudeville became her proving ground, burlesque her playground. It was in those burlesque halls that Mae West truly came alive. In her early teens, she danced nude, covered only with a fan as wide as her ambitions, her body dusted in shimmering powder that caught the lights and cast her in a glow of her own making. As the powder fell like glittering snow onto the faces of the enraptured front row, Mae proved she understood spectacle like no one else. She was the tease and the punchline, the woman who could make a room erupt with laughter with a single glance, or silence it entirely with the curve of a smile. Mae West was just 18 when she stepped onto the Broadway stage for the first time. The review itself flickered briefly, but Mae left an impression that refused to fade. The New York Times singled her out as a girl named Mae West, hitherto unknown, praising her snappy way of singing and dancing. It was a quiet prophecy, one that hinted at the roar she would later unleash. In 1911, she added a husband, Frank Wallace, to her act, a fleeting role in her life that lasted about as long as their double ragtime routine. Their marriage became little more than a legal technicality, with divorce papers lingering unsigned until 1942. In the meantime, Wallace tried to revive his career in 1935 by billing himself as Mae West's husband. It was a performance as ill-fated as their union, quickly forgotten while Mae kept forging her legend. Her breakthrough came in 1918 with the Broadway review Sometime, where Mae stole the show with The Shimmy, a provocative dance she unapologetically borrowed from African-American club dancers. Mae's movements were sultry, her voice a growl of blues, and her rhythm steeped in the influence of performers like Bert Williams. She later took the stage with Duke Ellington's band in Belle of the 90s, blending her voice with their swing so seamlessly it felt like a jazz romance. By the early 1920s, Mae had perfected her signature style. Critics might have sneered that she was the rough hand-on-hip character, but audiences couldn't get enough. Mae owned every stage she graced, walking as though the floor tilted in her favor and delivering lines that cut with wit and charm. Her transition to the nightclub circuit paired her with a then unknown Harry Richman on piano, but even as she dazzled cabaret audiences, Mae felt restless. The scripts offered to her were dull, the roles uninspired. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "You can write your own play," and so she did. In 1926, Mae West's Sex debuted at Daly's Theater in Manhattan, and it was everything the title promised. Mae starred as a sex worker who proved herself better than the so-called respectable hypocrites around her. The play crackled with scandal, burglary, spiked drinks, crooked cops, bribery, all wrapped in Mae's audacious charm. City newspapers refused to run ads. Variety called it the nastiest thing ever done on the New York stage. But Mae, ever the provocateur, understood scandal better than anyone. The more society tried to suppress it, the more audiences clamored for a ticket. Sex played to packed houses for over 300 performances, raking in $10,000 a week, long after its opening night. But success has its price. The Society for the Suppression of Vice had Mae arrested, charging her with corrupting the morals of youth. The trial turned into a spectacle, and Mae, true to form, made it a masterpiece of publicity. Sentenced to 10 days in jail, she served 8 and emerged a living legend. Silk underwear, she quipped, had been her only concession to her cell's drab confines. She even wrote to the warden afterward, leaving one final, unforgettable line. "I hope Warden Duffy will continue making bad men good, while I continue making good men bad." Mae West didn't just flirt with controversy, she courted it. Her second play, The Drag, was a daring exploration of queer characters and New York's underground drag balls, decades before Paris's Burning captured their cultural legacy. But it wasn't long before she caught the disapproving eye of a formidable nemesis, William Randolph Hearst. The media mogul published an editorial calling for censorship to prevent such sex perversion for dirty dollars. The backlash was swift, and no theater in New York would dare book the production. Undeterred, Mae pressed forward. Her next play, Pleasure Man, tackled similar themes and met an equally dramatic fate. After just one Broadway performance, the police stormed in and shut it down. Mae, always ready for the spotlight, even when it was aimed by law enforcement, found herself arrested yet again. At trial, however, the jury deadlocked, and Mae strolled out of the courtroom triumphant, no doubt with one hand perched sassily on her hip. But it was her fourth play, Diamond Lil, that cemented Mae West's status as an icon. The story of a diamond-draped, wisecracking hostess in the seedy Bowery of the 1890s, Diamond Lil debuted in Mae's native Brooklyn in 1928 and sparkled like the gems she adored. By this time, Mae's personal diamond collection rivaled those of royalty, though she famously pawned it all to finance the production. "I had never before seen a human being place a 100% bet on himself," remarked one acquaintance, summing up Mae West's audacity in a single sentence. The gamble paid off. The play was a runaway success, transferring to Broadway, touring nationally, and defining Mae's public persona for decades to come. Always multitasking, she penned her first novel, The Constant Sinner, which delved into the taboo topic of interracial love, while juggling a string of affairs with lawyers, co-stars, and dancers. In her autobiography, Mae cheekily confessed, "One Saturday it was 22 times. I was sort of tired." Among her lovers during this whirlwind period was George Raft, a future Hollywood gangster star who, in the late 1920s, was a dancer with connections to real-life mobsters. Mae and George struck up a fiery fling, though their relationship cooled into a lifelong friendship. But even Mae's seemingly endless run of triumphs couldn't escape the twin shadows of the Great Depression and Hollywood censorship. The Hays Code, a moralistic chokehold on creativity, banned her plays from film adaptation, leaving Mae short on both cash and opportunities. It was George Raft who threw her a lifeline, recommending her to Paramount Pictures for a role in his next film. Paramount was teetering on the brink of financial ruin, and Mae's arrival in Los Angeles made barely a ripple. Gossip columnist Luella Parsons dismissed her as fat, fair, and I don't know how near 40. But Mae had no intention of fading into obscurity. After reading her scripted scenes for Night After Night, Mae decided they simply wouldn't do, and rewrote her lines for the film. When a hatcheck girl says to Mae,
"Goodness, what beautiful diamonds." Goodness had nothing to do with it, dearie.
The audience loved Mae, and Paramount, desperate for a hit, decided to make her the star of her own film using the Diamond Lil character she created. To dodge the Hays Code's ban on her infamous Bowery character, Lil's brothel became a dance hall, her name changed to Lou, and the film's title transformed into She Done Him Wrong. Such was the studio's eagerness to please that Mae West was allowed to choose her own leading man, a rare privilege in 1930s Hollywood. Mae, always with an eye for a good thing, spotted a dashing young man on the street and declared, "If he can talk, I'll take him." The man in question, an unknown actor named Cary Grant. At the time, Cary was under contract at Paramount, but far from stardom. Mae's She Done Him Wrong changed that, catapulting him into the spotlight. At just 66 minutes, the film remains the shortest ever nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, but its impact was anything but small. Mae's character, Lady Lou, draped in diamonds and confidence, turned seduction into an art form. When she playfully invited Cary Grant's character to her apartment, she delivered a line that would echo for decades.
You know, I always did like a man in a uniform. And that one fits you grand. Why don't you come up sometime, see me?
Most actresses of her era played the pursued, but Mae flipped the script with her bold, unashamed invitation. She wasn't just luring men, she was setting the terms. She Done Him Wrong wasn't just a showcase for Mae's wit and sensuality. It revealed her depth of character. Lady Lou wasn't just a temptress. She was a sisterly figure to women in need. When a young girl, seduced and abandoned, sought refuge in her saloon, Lou offered comfort with a knowing quip.
Listen, when women go wrong, men go right after them.
Her scenes with her black maid, Pearl, portrayed by the brilliant Louise Beavers, offered moments of humor and camaraderie, though they reflected the racial dynamics of the era. Pearl fretted,
"I wouldn't want no policeman to catch me without no petticoat." No policeman? How about a nice fireman, huh?
Mae capped the film with a sultry rendition of Shelton Brooks's I Wonder Where My Easy Rider's Gone, a daringly bawdy number that cemented her reputation as a trailblazer. Unlike many white performers of her time, Mae openly credited African-American music and performance as foundational to her style, earning her respect even as she pushed boundaries. She Done Him Wrong was a colossal success, grossing an estimated $10 million, a staggering figure in the depths of the Great Depression. Producer William LeBaron later credited Mae with saving Paramount Studios, which had been teetering on the brink of collapse. But Mae wasn't done yet. Later that same year, she followed up with I'm No Angel, another smash hit that saw Mae living out a childhood dream, taming lions. In one unforgettable scene, Mae's character confidently entered a cage of lions wearing stilettos and wielding a whip. She didn't just tame the lions, she tamed every man who crossed her path, including Cary Grant's character once more. The film's climax wasn't a trial of Mae, but rather a trial by Mae. In the final act, she faces a breach of promise lawsuit from her fiancé, played by Cary Grant. But true to form, she takes control, cross-examining herself with such sharp wit and clever quips that she completely dismantles the case. By the end of her testimony, Tira not only wins over the court, but also reclaims her love. This courtroom finale became a hallmark moment, showcasing Mae's unique blend of humor, intelligence, and independence.
Well, it's not the men in your life that counts, it's the life in your men.
Became instant classics, epitomizing her power to make an audience laugh, gasp, and cheer all at once. Mae had now not only starred in, but also helped to create two of the year's biggest blockbusters. She wasn't just the face of the new woman. She was the one writing the scripts, crafting the characters, and shaping her on-screen persona. This level of control made her a target, and a campaign began to build against her. The backlash came to a head during the production of her third film, Belle of the 90s, 1934. Between I'm No Angel and this project, Hollywood was experiencing a seismic shift. Religious groups ramped up their efforts to combat what they saw as the moral decay brought on by the movies. They formed an organization called the Legion of Decency, which urged parishioners to sign a pledge condemning what they called debauching motion pictures, which are corrupting public morals and promoting a sex mania in our land. While the Legion was spearheaded by Catholic leaders, many Protestants and even some Jewish groups aligned with the cause, creating a powerful coalition. Their efforts pressured Hollywood to strengthen its adherence to the production code, which had technically been in place since 1930, but was largely ignored. In 1934, Joseph Breen was appointed to enforce the Hays Code with full authority under the newly empowered Production Code Administration. Breen was a strict moralist, deeply committed to upholding what he viewed as decency and morality in films. Unlike his predecessors, who treated the code as a flexible set of guidelines, Breen took an uncompromising approach. For years, filmmakers had worked within an unofficial system. They would include as much sex, violence, or innuendo as they wanted, knowing that the PCA would trim some content to satisfy state censors and religious groups. This strategy allowed studios to push boundaries while still delivering films that audiences found enticing. But Breen had no interest in compromises. His sole focus was on enforcing morality, regardless of its impact on the industry's bottom line. This wave of censorship was, in part, a reaction to the controversy stirred by Mae's I'm No Angel. Religious leaders pointed to its bawdy humor, Mae's unapologetic sensuality, and her cheeky wit as evidence of Hollywood's supposed moral decline. The backlash blindsided Paramount and the film's director, who had underestimated the intensity of the public response. With Breen now at the helm, Mae found herself in the crosshairs of a system determined to curtail her creative freedom. One of Joseph Breen's first major actions as head of the PCA was to identify films from the pre-code era that would no longer be permitted under the stricter enforcement of the Hays Code. These films were withdrawn from circulation and effectively banned. Both She Done Him Wrong and I'm No Angel, Mae's two blockbuster hits, found themselves on this blacklist. As Mae began work on her third film, It Ain't No Sin, the title alone raised red flags with Breen and the censors. To comply, the title was changed to Belle of the 90s, a safer, more innocuous choice that could just as easily have suited a Jeanette MacDonald operetta. Despite the name change, the film was heavily edited to meet the new standards. What remained of Belle of the 90s, however, still showcased Mae's undeniable star power. Director Leo McCarey captured stunning close-ups of her, paired her with Duke Ellington's orchestra, and delivered a dazzling tableau sequence featuring Mae wrapped in a gown, posed in front of intricate designs evoking butterfly wings, spider legs, and, in the finale, the Statue of Liberty. Photoplay magazine called it a triumph of Mae over matter. While critics admired Mae's tenacity, audiences were less enthusiastic. The film lacked the unfiltered wit and edge of her earlier work, and the heavy-handed editing was obvious. The once booming Mae West formula was beginning to falter under the constraints of censorship. Mae's next film, Going to Town, 1935, directed by Alexander Hall, was an underrated comedy that still managed to deliver classic Maeisms despite Breen's watchful eye. Explaining to a persistent suitor why they wouldn't work, she quipped, "We're intellectual opposites. I'm intellectual, and you're opposite." And in one of the film's standout exchanges, Mae's character reflects on her life. "For a long time, I was ashamed of the way I lived." To which the young man responds, "You mean you've reformed?" Mae fires back, "No, I got over being ashamed." Despite these flashes of brilliance, audiences weren't reacting to Mae's censored films the way they had to her earlier work. Paramount decided to try a new direction with her next project. In this new role, Mae played a kept woman who stabs her lover and escapes to Alaska by boat, switching identities with Christian missionaries to evade capture. The story then sees her genuinely devote herself to charity. While the Hays Commission reluctantly approved the film, Mae found herself under attack from a far more powerful adversary, William Randolph Hearst. Hearst launched a full-scale campaign against Mae West, with his newspapers flooding their pages with negative coverage of her films and even refusing to accept advertisements for them. The reasons for his vendetta remain speculative. Some claimed Mae had made a wisecrack about Hearst's mistress, actress Marion Davies. Others believed his anger stemmed from frustrations with the censors, particularly after the Hayes office made extensive edits to Ceiling Zero, a Howard Hawks film Hearst had backed. These changes, made under pressure from aviation companies, had left Hearst furious about the censors' increasing influence. Mae had her own theory. "I think Hearst didn't like me because I was a woman making almost as much money as he was. He said he didn't like my morals, but there he was, a married man with a mistress. Who was he to throw words at me when he lived in a glass house?" Under mounting pressure, Paramount ended its relationship with Mae. She signed a new deal with independent producer Emmanuel Cohen, who distributed her films through Paramount. Cohen backed her next two projects, starting with Go West Young Man, 1936, a satire about a sexually voracious actress. However, after extensive negotiations with Breen, the film's sharp satire was almost entirely stripped away. Mae found herself creatively stifled. She struggled with writer's block while attempting to navigate around the censors. Her next film, Every Day's a Holiday, 1937, recycled elements from her earlier successes, but many of her signature lines were still cut. Audiences and critics alike grew tired of the now muted formula, and the film became her first financial failure. As a result, Cohen severed ties with Mae. Undeterred, Mae returned to New York and mounted a series of live shows. It was during Mae West's live tour, a triumphant return to the stage after her Hollywood exit, that the infamous box office poison ad made its debut in The Hollywood Reporter. The ad, a shocking industry-wide critique, named Mae alongside other once dominant stars of the 1930s, including Kay Francis, Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, and Fred Astaire. The claim was blunt. These performers, despite their fame, had become liabilities at the box office. The ad suggested studios drop these high-salaried actors and instead focus on creating vehicles for rising stars like Shirley Temple, Carole Lombard, and Mae's own discovery, Cary Grant. The ad marked a turning point in Hollywood's attitude toward its older stars, particularly women, as the industry began prioritizing youth and fresh faces over seasoned icons. While some on the list, such as Crawford and Dietrich, managed to reinvent themselves in the coming years, Mae's career never fully recovered. The era of her major stardom had ended, though her influence and spirit remained undimmed. Mae continued to work for the rest of her life, maintaining a carefully curated public image. She spent over 30 years with Paul Novak, her bodyguard and devoted companion. Despite her reputation for hedonism, Mae lived a surprisingly disciplined life. She followed an organic diet, exercised regularly, and took her writing as seriously as any novelist. Far from the lazy caricature of a diva, she orchestrated every aspect of her performances and image with precision and artistry. Mae also returned to her theatrical roots with Catherine Was Great, a bawdy stage play she toured for years. In true Mae West fashion, she was the only female actor in the cast, commanding the spotlight as the notorious Russian Empress. In her later years, Mae turned her attention to the mystical, dedicating much of her time to exploring mediums, ESP, and astrology. Her interest in the supernatural added another layer to her already larger-than-life persona. After more than 2 decades away from the screen, Mae made a comeback at the age of 77 in the controversial film Myra Breckinridge. The film, which satirized Hollywood and gender norms, was polarizing and widely panned, but Mae's presence brought a touch of old Hollywood glamour. On set, she clashed with co-star Raquel Welch, but her wit remained as sharp as ever. At 85, Mae made her final film appearance in Sextet, a musical comedy based on one of her stage plays. Though the film was not a critical success, it allowed Mae to deliver one last unforgettable line. "Is that a gun in your pocket, or are you just glad to see me?" Mae's legacy extended far beyond the silver screen. Salvador Dalí immortalized her in surrealist art, creating the famous Mae West sofa, a piece inspired by her iconic lips. She also appeared on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. When asked for permission to use her likeness, Mae agreed, but not without her signature humor. "What would I be doing in a Lonely Hearts Club?" Mae West passed away in her Hollywood home on November 22, 1980, at the age of 88. Her devoted companion, Paul Novak, opted for an open casket at her funeral, explaining, "My gal still looked great." Thank you for watching this week's video on Mae West. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Was Hollywood right to censor her? Are there lines that shouldn't be crossed, or was Mae simply ahead of her time? And how do you think she's remembered today? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. We post new content every week about amazing women throughout history. So tell us who you'd like to see featured next. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible patrons: Velocity Girl, ZenLife68, Jillian Barker, Junie Moon, Philip Gallegos, Kingsley Clark, Kafum Chung, Harry Thurston, Karen Craig, Michelle Lynn Neal, Bavia Andrea, Tracy Walsh, Elizabeth, CTS Bathory, America Marie, Joy McGuire, Amber Perry, Amanda Lynn, Snowball, The Inappropriate Heifer, Kendra McNally, Marianne Nelson, Deborah Shepard, Ida Kloster Jensen, and Kay Philemine. Your support breathes life into this project and makes these stories possible. And to everyone watching until the very end, thank you for helping this project grow. Stay curious, keep exploring history, and as always, thanks for watching.